Welcome back to Giant Monster Games. My name is Ted, and this week we're going to infinity and beyond with a sweet mana generating combo in Modern. Before we get started, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to Giant Monster Games if you enjoy this content. To get things started, we can take a look at the combo. This combo is made up of having both Pili Pala and Grand Architect on the battlefield. The first card we're going to talk about is Pili Pala. Pili Pala says that we can pay to untap it to add one color of any mana to our mana pool. Then we're going to talk about Grand Architect. Grand Architect says that we can have any artifact creature of ours become blue at the cost of one blue mana. And with that, we can make Pili Pala blue. Then Grand Architect's second ability becomes relevant. It says that we can tap an untapped blue creature we control, and when we do that, we get 2 generic mana to add to our mana pool. We can spend that mana in turn on Pili Pala's ability to untap it, and then that causes us to generate a mana of any color from Pili Pala. The cool trick about it is it doesn't just keep going infinite and we don't get anything. Pili Pala generates that extra mana of any color because we don't have to spend the mana on making Pili Pala blue again because it's still blue until the end of the turn. So we can just keep tapping it, untapping it, tapping it, untapping it, and we get an infinite amount of any colored mana that we choose. So now that we've explained the combo, let's take a look at our creature package. To start things off, we're going to take a look at 4 copies of Merfolk Looter. This card is great because it helps us cycle through our deck and find the combo pieces that we need. Next, we're going to have some value creatures that we're going to look at that'll help us protect our combo and disrupt our opponent's game plan. We're running 4 copies of Judge's Familiar and 4 copies of Mausoleum Wanderer. Both of these creatures essentially serve the same purpose in the deck, and they can help us make a lot of good tempo plays against our opponents. Next, we have a creature that will start small and get bigger. We're running 3 copies of Cloudfin Raptor. We'll often play Cloudfin in the early game. He's a really cheap creature, and he'll gradually grow into a 3/4 flyer that we can beat down with in the late game. Then we're running 3 copies of Lodestone Golem to help slow down our opponent, along with 3 copies of Mir Superion, which can be cast from our Pili Pala mana. They're both large beaters that we can use to close out the game. To cast our artifacts, we have 3 copies of Chief Engineer. Chief Engineer allows us to tap our creatures to pay for the artifact spells. And finally, as you may have noticed, we have a lot of permanents with blue mana symbols. Well, that's because we're running 2 copies of Master of Waves. Master of Waves is protection from red. It enters the battlefield with a number of elemental tokens equal to our devotion to blue, or, the amount of blue mana symbols that we currently have on the battlefield. And this allows us to flood the board and close out games, giving us more of an aggro strategy. Moving on to our spell package. Firstly, we have one of our big combo win conditions for the deck, and that's a single copy of Banefire. Banefire deals X damage to target creature or player, and if X is 5 or more, Banefire cannot be countered, and its damage also cannot be prevented. So we generate infinite mana with the Pili Pala combo, then we use Banefire for an uncounterable, unstoppable, infinite amount of damage. Next, we have our best shot at finding that missing combo piece. We're running 4 copies of Whispers of the Muse. With this spell, we're able to draw a card, and if we pay its buyback cost, it returns it to our hand when it resolves rather than our graveyard. So with infinite mana, we get infinite draws, and we can just basically pick up our deck, find the Banefire, cast it. Next up is our land package. For this, we're going to be running 16 islands and a single mountain for all of our colored mana needs. And we'll be able to fetch out the mana that we need by running 4 copies of Evolving Wilds. Moving on to the sideboard. The sideboard consists of 2 copies of Relic of Progenitus. It's our one-stop shop to take care of any graveyard strategies. Next, we're running 3 copies of Ceremonious Rejection. Ceremonious Rejection helps us take care of decks like Tron, their big threats. We got Eldrazi Tron that takes care of their big threats. It takes care of threats from Affinity. It's pretty versatile. Then we're running 2 copies of Echoing Truth. This card allows us to bounce troublesome permanents that our opponent controls, and even bounce our own to save them from a wrath. Next up is 3 copies of Mana Leak. It's a great way to counter pretty much everything in the format, especially early game. Then running 2 copies of the Bident of Thassa. We have a lot of small flyers that we can use to draw cards off of the Bident's ability. And lastly, running 2 copies of Spreading Seas is another way to fight against Tron and just put our opponent off of mana, giving us some time to assemble our combo. Let's take a look at some upgrades. One thing I'd like to recommend to protect the combo is Pact of Negation. It'll counter pretty much anything for free, and you can always pay for it the next turn with Pili Pala mana. Another thing that we can use to protect our combo would be Kira the Great Glass Spinner. It's a good include and it gives us some extra protection. Then we can also alternatively run Remand over Mana Leak for the tempo plays. We can also use Academy Ruins and Mindslaver to take a lock on the game. And another win condition we can possibly add is adding Walking Ballista. It's a great include to the deck because we can combo off making it massive and then remove the counters from it to ping our opponent to death.
And that's the entire deck tech. If you enjoyed the video, consider sharing it, vote for the next video, pound the like button, and subscribe to Giant Monster Games. I'm Ted, and until next time, don't forget to game like a giant monster!